a little bit of housekeeping. So welcome. The book today, You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy. I loved this book. I'm so excited for this discussion. Next books coming up. Big reminder that June, we have our bonus book. So once a quarter, we step away from our sort of broader business acumen books, and we do an extra book that is more sales focused. This quarter, it's Shut the Hell Up and Sell by Ronell Richards. If y'all don't follow Ronell already, do. He's amazing. He's just a great creator, sales expert. Very excited to read the book. That's on LinkedIn Live. We won't be on Zoom. We'll be back on LinkedIn for that one. I already sent the calendar invite out, so if you haven't seen it, let me know. And then we'll be back at our 6 p.m. Eastern normal time as we head into July and August. The only note for July is we'll be a week later than usual because I just didn't want to, like, on 4th of July, we should be barbecuing and, I don't know, carrying on, not book clubbing. But that's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And then back to normal Tuesday, normal time for Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. And I don't know if folks are super familiar with Shonda Rhimes. I'm thinking not everybody is, but she is like, she's it. She has her own production company called Shondaland. She has like a $250 million net worth. Like, she's like a big deal. And she's the screenwriter of like Grey's Anatomy, that really famous like Bridgerton that came out during the pandemic. So I'm very excited about that one. I'm going to just drop the link to that Ronell Richards event here as well. So if you have not already, please do sign up for that one. And that one is like outside of book club too. So if there's other folks you want to invite that aren't in book club, like please think about doing that because they're more than welcome. Okay, let's dive in. So as I mentioned, as people were coming into the meeting, Will can't join us. He is at SaaStr. He is currently preparing for a wizard rave party at the Immersive Van Gogh Museum. I should have had my outfit so I could show it off to y'all. But I have a like head to toe bright purple bodysuit that I'm wearing tonight. So watch out for those pictures on LinkedIn. But I do have one of my dear friends, Amelia Taylor, and one of my TikTok friends, and this is our first official collab, so extra excited about that, Daniel Space. Do you two mind popping off mute and introducing yourself to the team?
No, not at all. Hi, I'm Daniel Space. I am an HR business partner who went rogue after 20 years of working in HR, designing organizations like WebMD, Electronic Arts, and Spotify. And in the early 2020, I was like, oh my God, I know a lot of stuff that a lot of people really need to know, like everything from how job families are created and how interviews happen and why hiring managers make the decisions that they do and why compensation works that they do. And so I decided to take a little bit of time off and I started making content. I'm like, oh my God, everyone's lying. Like all of this fake resume advice and job search advice and interview advice, and everyone and their mother was a career coach. And I'm like, how are you giving people this terrible advice and charging them $1,000 for it? So then I started making content on TikTok. Despite the reputation I have received that Will and I tease each other on, I do not like actually tearing people down, and I want everyone to share their experience. But I always tell people there's a very big difference between my personal perspective and here's one secret hack that will get you the job. And especially what I try to teach and train people is before you take any advice is to review their credentials, to understand that there's 3 different roles that can actively and confidently talk about how companies hire, that if you're not in one of those 3 roles, you still have a wealth of information and advice as relates to your personal perspective, but it should always be careful as it relates to how jobs are gotten. As of right now, I'm very proud. I have 2,873 notes and messages. Like I keep every single one of people that have said, because of you, I got a better job. I negotiated a better salary. I crossed 6 figures. I was able to buy a house. I got the director promotion. And that's what I live for.
I love it. I love it. There's a really funny TikTok. It's not funny, it's infuriating, but like sometimes things are so infuriating you have to laugh at them. But there's one TikTok that keeps going viral and it's being made by different people across the years. And it's always somebody that is in their very early 20s and they've had 1 to 2 jobs, like professional jobs ever. And every video is, I have the #1 question that you have to ask at the end of interviews, and this is going to get you the job. And it's always at the very end of the interview, right before it ends, ask them, do you have any concerns that would stop you from hiring me?
Which is where Will and I have our Titanic disputes, because he said that is very essential for a salesperson. And I say, I know sales managers who hate that question. So no, there's other ways to demonstrate you know how to close. Do not ask that question. He's like, no, you might be good in HR, but the sales stuff is, trust me, it's my stuff. And I'm like, I built sales organizations, you're wrong. And we
And
have this.
I gotta bridge the gap because I've been like a hiring manager in sales for 15 years. And I'm like,
You got it
if
exactly.
somebody asked me that, I would be like, can you leave now? Like, please, like, please don't attack me.
Oh,
Amazing. Well, Dan, we are so dang happy to have you here. Amelia, hi, friend. Tell the folks about yourself.
I see why you two are friends 100%. Like, I want you two in the same room, and I feel like it would just be like so much energy. I would love it. Like, I get it. And I love that you're in space, Dan. Like, that makes me really happy. So I have been in sales for pretty much all of my career and went over to the dark side recently to marketing. Decided that my strengths were really building these relationships with people and meeting buyers where they were at, kind of in these dark social spaces, and putting them through this, the dark funnel, and really understanding people through helping first and foremost. So putting that helping hand out, opposed to it being this, selling factor of me really pushing that down your throat. Okay, we're going to find a solution for you, and this is going to be it. I mean, I remember I had a few people, I was working at a company, and it was one of my first, I started as like an SDR, realized that it was not going to ever go up to an AE because the AEs were getting like hair salons on their calendar. And I was like, yeah, no, that's no money's to be made there at all. So I'm like, man, if I present 2 different job opportunities, like to leadership, they're going to have a choice in their brain to be able to like one or the other. So I'm like, here's what I've been doing, working solely with enterprise like companies, and working solely with specific AEs who I know are closing, and they're the 3 top AEs of the companies. So here's the whole target list that we've been working. Here's the KPIs I have set for myself. Pick and choose which one. So I realize now, I look back and I'm like, wow, okay, every company I've been a part of, I've created my own role thinking I can do whatever the hell I want. And I have 0 regrets in that by any means, because I feel as though it's pioneering what I see as gaps within organizations. I would pop into marketing meetings being like, hey, do you guys see this one? They're like, hey, Amelia, welcome again. Like, you were not invited to this at all. But the sheer fact that there were things that I was seeing from an outsider's perspective, that just shows there's so much, neglect when it comes to who's bridging the gaps where. So with where I'm at now, I'm at Reggie AI. So I'm leading evangelism over here. And whoop, whoop, yeah, even though you're wearing all your purple tonight, it's fine.
I mean,
Reggie's
not throwing a rave, Amelia.
They're not, and I can't hate. I invested, we're good. It's good.
Yeah, right.
Can't hate all that much.
Torn allegiances.
Can't do shit. I can't be like, oh, don't wear it. I'm like, oh, I kind of love it for you. But I'm leading evangelism over here, and Jen Allen and Arthur Castillo and some people, Chili Piper, Jen over at Lavender, and Nick Bennett, Leslie, some people who have really done evangelism like well and right, and they have done it to a degree where they've really tailored it in ways to know how to be that walking, talking bridge to a solution that they have. There's been, I've gone to them and just said like, hey, can you help me figure out if I'm doing this right or not? Because I think when you put that ego and that pride to the side and you just are vulnerable and you say, hey, can you help me out? That's how I've gotten to where I am today in a little over 3 years, really, by saying, can you help me? And to figure out how I can gather the most feedback possible and take it and practice it. And also know that all feedback can be heard. It doesn't have to be taken. All advice can be heard. It doesn't have to be taken. That goes for what you were saying, Dan, too. You know, like you can hear everything, but you don't have to take everything. Try everything once,
Love
sure,
that.
whatever, that goes for everything in life, but you don't carve your own path. You know, I feel like that's the biggest thing in life. So happy
And
that
that's
I'm
a
great to meet y'all.
that's a interesting like segue, because it's a point that Kate makes in the book as well, is like listen, but there's going to be a point where you decide that maybe like this information or this advice is not for you. And certainly like being in the state of constantly learning, like making your own roles, and then once you have demanded the job, being like, oh no, how do I figure out what I'm doing here? That does require a lot of listening. Okay, I would love to start off actually by asking a question. Hi Liz, welcome. And I saw Michelle joined as well. Hi Michelle. I would like to start with a question for everybody, and you can drop it in the chat. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, after reading this book, how would you rate your listening skills? 1 to 10, 10 being the best. I'll start. I'm going to give myself a 7. I actually think I'm a pretty good listener, but it's been something that I have had to put a lot of effort into. Former an 8, after a 3, Dan. That's really funny. Okay, so a lot of people sort of in, okay, some 4s, 3.5s. People are being either very humble, or you're like afraid that I'm gonna ask a follow-up question about listening. So you're like, I better rank myself really low so she doesn't pick me. Maren, halfway through.
Low being like not.
You're on the path to becoming a better listener.
Okay.
So you did not listen already. I got my eyes on you.
Wait, so what I'm saying
So
is
10 being the best. 10 being you're like the best listener you possibly could be.
well, let's go with a 1. Like after that, like let's go with a 1.
Dan, I want to dig into your response a little bit because I love it. So you said formerly an 8, but after reading the book, a 3. Tell me why.
One of the things that I really embraced as I crossed into my mid-40s and as I sort of took a break from being an HR business partner is that when you work in HR, there is a sense of integrity and decision-making. Like people look at you as the authority. You have to make the tough decisions. You have to understand what happens. And after the 150th time of a manager who says, oh, well, I just can't get this employee to figure it out. I'm like, I know exactly what's wrong. You're not giving them the feedback. They're not responding, blah, blah, blah. And when I started to strike out on my own and do content creation, and I really started to listen to some horror stories that a lot of managers and HR people had, I realized I was consistently having to catch myself into coming up with the conclusion already. And nobody likes that. So when someone will be like, well, I just wanted to talk to you. This person is running a little bit late. They seem to be doing this. They seem to have to do this. And I'm like, okay, here's what you do. And I'm like, I'm not listening. I'm not paying attention to the details. I'm not spending time letting them listen to their story. You know, I'm not asking the right questions. And it was, I really enjoy that with age comes this very, very good understanding of working on skills versus trying. I'm like, how do I not know how to be an empathetic listener at 44 after doing HR 20 years? I'm like, oh, this is something I could really work to improve on to be better at it. And I've noticed it, especially after the book, where I catch myself with it all the time. I'm like, wow, I do this a lot. And especially with
that's I loved so much of what you said. 2 things that really resonated for me. One, that it's like it is a skill, and I think it's easy for people to be like, oh, I'm just not good at remembering people's names. Oh, I'm just not a good listener. And that's not true. It's just that it's a skill that you've not yet put enough time into. So like it is something that we can get better at. And the other thing that you mentioned that really resonated is like the jump to conclusions. Like we're on the jump to conclusions map. And it's interesting because I run, as part of my like training series, one of the workshops is an active listening workshop. And I use a framework that I created myself from like reading books like this and other books. And one of the R's, actually, I'll drop a link to it. It's like not the training, it's just a link to the like the Canva overview of the framework, but you can have it, use it, take a peek if you want. But the second R in the 4R framework is resist. And immediately people assume I mean like resist interrupting, don't interrupt. But, and I saw this echoed in the book as well. One of the hardest parts of resisting is actually like resisting the temptation to assume that you know what they're trying to tell you, or to judge, and not even judge negatively, but like particularly you've been in this HR business partner role for years. You're hearing a lot of the same things over again. Like a lot of us are in sales, right? We sell the same thing. You hear the same questions and the same asks, and you just, you start assuming that you know why they're asking the question, or you know why they're sharing that with you, and you stop listening. And a couple of other pieces that are on that resist framework. And then I'd love to hear like a raise of hands if people are like, oh yeah, I do this as well. But like resisting, maybe we'll just do a raise of hands as we go, like resisting the urge to start renting space in your head to what you're going to say next before they stop speaking. Raise of hands. Who does that? Yeah, everybody, right? That's a hard one. Or like resist, this is maybe the hardest for me. Resisting the temptation to jump in with my super relatable story, because I'm just like you and I'm so relatable. Who does that? I'm telling you folks, when I realized how that made other people feel, that was a tough day. That was a tough day for me, because until that point, like I genuinely thought that that was being a good communicator. Like I thought that I was communicating, that like I really knew what they were going through because I had this similar relatable experience. Little did I know that all I was doing was taking the spotlight off of them and making it all about me. Some gut checks there, right? So it feels like everybody raised their hands on pretty much all of those. And I'd love to hear Amelia, Dan, and really anybody that has a story to share and insight to share. Like I sort of use Amelia and Dan as my like conversational folks, but this is a book club, so never hesitate to drop thoughts, comments, and chat. Come off mute if you have something to share. But Amelia, Dan, what parts of listening, of active listening, are hardest for you? And how do you keep yourself in check when you find yourself like renting space in your head, or like you've already jumped to conclusion? What does that look like for you, Amelia?
I mean, okay, so when I was selling RevOps services, I realized I didn't know what the hell I was talking about when I was talking to these people. So I just kept going and going. And I was like, shut up. In my mind, I knew to shut up, but I was also like, they would say something and I would just jump into this relatability whole aspect when it was like, no, I'm trying to tell you something. And it was where I realized, once I was being mentored by someone who would jump on calls with me, Rosalind Santelena, if y'all know her at all, she's wonderful. I think one of the only few people in the world who really understands RevOps, to be honest. But she was very open and honest with me when she was like, so what they were trying to say, like, so afterward, I mean, it was an accountability person who said to me, hey, what they were trying to do is really share this. And when you jumped in, I think it pushed them away a bit because it made it about you. Whereas if you just listened a little bit longer and you didn't have the look on your face too of it being, the expression of, well, I'm about to talk, or the like, it's like, oh God, okay, you're annoying me completely, because you've been on the other side of those calls too, right? Where people are like, oh, I get it. Yep, me too. And you're like, okay, but I'm talking about me right now. Like, we're not talking about you. And because if it's where the questions, and it's the curiosity aspect too. It's like, if you're not genuinely being curious and asking the right questions back, that shows there's not the active listening happening. So if you're not showing any signs of curiosity, I think that's a massive factor right there. That questions are going to be the key to showing that you're actively listening, even through Zoom. It's the EQ portion of things, right? It's the understanding how to read the Zoom room, if you will, by reading the expression of someone else and like what they're saying, and being present in the moment too, opposed to, and like for me, I have to, I mean, it's a constant reminder for myself on calls, like daily, literally daily, to reel myself in and let them finish before I continue talking, and then not jump into about Amelia, not relate solely to them, because this call is going to be, I'm going to be genuinely helping. Stop making it about you, Amelia. You have to show up for them. Like, shut up, Amelia. Seriously, stop right now. So like slapping on the hand, but also having the accountability of someone else. So I think that's a big thing, a like big factor of having someone else who can either like listen to your calls too and have being like, hey, give me genuine, honest to God feedback of what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well, like knowing what you're doing right and what you're not doing right, like both equally as important, like process of elimination, understanding what you're doing great at and what you're not doing great at, then knowing how to really boil it down into like, here's where my core strengths are, here's where I need to work at, the, specific things. And active listening 100% has been a massive one for me. So for this book, it's been like, whoa, okay, this is eye-opening, because I'm doing a lot of the things that it's telling me, like, this is speaking to me. I'm pretty sure she wrote it for Amelia right here. So, yeah, I mean, accountability and being super aware and curious.
I love that. Mike, where did you learn wait?
I don't even know where I picked it up. It was so many years ago. I have all kinds of things like that I use as kind of reminders, because it's a skill that takes a really, really long time, and it's easy to lose. I love the point about, you think that you know what the person's going to say because you've been doing it for so long, like in HR or in sales, and you just go, I know, here comes the objection. I know it's going to be, and then they say something different. You're like, oh, no, hold on. Versus if you were just listening and locked in, it's easier. And I think it's true in our personal lives as well. So that why am I talking plays in my head a lot. I'm even doing it now. Like, why am I talking? Why let somebody else go? But the other, even with that, is the notion of multitasking, which I think even Leslie, you commented about that when I posted on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, with this fallacy about multitasking, and active listening is the opposite of multitasking, because you cannot talk and listen at the same time. You cannot be on your phone and be listening at the same time. In fact, if I'm out with somebody, we're, business lunch, whatever, as soon as they go to their phone, I shut up and I wait. And sometimes it's a very long and uncomfortable wait, especially when they realize, oh, Mike's not talking anymore. Like, yeah, waiting for you to come back. And it's not to be rude or try to act superior. It's just, I know that you can't listen to me and look at your phone or respond to somebody at the same time.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like, I don't want to talk at you. I want to talk with you. So answer your text messages, and then we'll pick this up. Okay, Josh had a comment, and Dan, I want to get your take on this. So Josh said, from the book, this hit hard. When listening, your stance should be curiosity. Ask questions out of curiosity as opposed to questioning, proving a point, setting a trap, changing someone's mind to make the other person feel foolish. Great takeaway. So that was certainly something that hit hard for me too, Josh. There were a couple points in this book where I felt just like very seen, and it seems like that was maybe kind of a common takeaway. But one of them came on page 45, because I sort of feel like one of the things that, well, I know one of the things that makes me good at sales is asking questions. And I assume that was a seamless transition from like, oh, clearly because I'm a good listener, and that's because I'm asking them questions out of genuine curiosity. But Kate says, listening for the things you have in common gradually builds up rapport and is a way to engage with anyone. But peppering people with appraising and personal questions, like what do you do for a living or where do you live, is actually interrogating them. You're not trying to get to know them, you're sizing them up. Dan, I'd love to hear your take on that.
You know, what's funny? Someone once said that to me, when people ask what you do, what they're essentially doing is figuring out how much respect to give you. And I hated that because I'm an org design geek. So when Amelia was talking before, I'm like, oh, what area did she go into marketing? Was it performance marketing? Was it AB marketing? What kind of account executive type of marketing? But I'm like, there is actually a sense of truthfulness to that, because if someone says, for example, that they're an administrative assistant, or if someone says, oh, you know, I'm an HR coordinator, I'm like, oh, okay, so you're not, and I'm like, whoa, like that's something to catch right there. Like there's this immediate sense of classism, and it's, again, I am a very firm believer that the older you grow, the more you treat yourself with gentleness when you catch those sort of things. And then you realize like that this person who just said that they're an administrative assistant or a recruiting coordinator or a part-time bookkeeper is not any worth less of any respect. That is just the role that they have in this company. And who knows that they, you know, that they've been a backpacking traveler, they've raised 7 kids, they have 3 foster kids, they volunteer on weekends, or they just read a lot of books and just like having quality time. So catching myself with things like that, I've always find fascinating. There was one small point that you mentioned before, and I hate the fact that I'm doing this, but I'm using the book to also raise my own skills. So as an HR business partner, a lot of my job is coaching executives. And so what I started realizing is I have a CTO and a CMO who are my 2 biggest client groups. And I'm like, do you really feel like you were listening? Were you really demonstrating curiosity when you cut off the director of performance marketing? And they were like, I really appreciate that feedback. I'm like, that's just who I am. Like, I'm like, at some point I'll probably give you the book, but what's really fascinating with this book is that you start to see how it happens many, 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 many times.
Ooh, so true. Liz, I don't know if you're okay to come off mute, but you dropped really good examples. For anybody that's read the book, the example of the furniture salesperson, for anybody that hasn't, there's a furniture salesman, and his like key to getting, he was the #1 salesperson in the entire company, and they were clocking like 200 million in revenue a year. So the man is selling some furniture. And the key to his success was just not talking. Like when people were making a decision, like just not saying a damn thing. And prior to that, like listening to their stories, which were usually like very personal stories, completely unrelated to the purchase of this furniture. But then Liz, you also said you experimented with text about questions that were curious, not leading, assuming. What can you tell us about that?
So throughout the entire book, I found myself wondering how much of this is applicable to text conversations, because I am a texter. I don't really enjoy phone conversations. And I think that might say something about my listening. Like maybe the reason I don't enjoy phone conversations is because I feel like I have to be so tuned in that I can't be doing anything else. Well, but isn't that the point? Like, you're not supposed to be doing anything else. You're supposed to be listening. So that was kind of a moment for me. So I have a friend who just had a baby, and we were texting, and she was, you know, giving me kind of some information about how things are going. And it's her fiance's first, but it's her third. And I just tried to word my questions differently. So for example, she mentioned that he was struggling with basically knowing what to do and when. And so she, you know, was just kind of taking over and doing it all. And the way I wanted to ask the question was like, well, don't you think since it's his first, you should give him a chance to figure it out? You know, I wanted to kind of
Mm,
give her advice through my questions. And I realized, well, that's not what you're supposed to do. So instead, I was like, are you feeling stressed about this? Or no, I said, how is this making you feel? And then she like unloaded. And she actually came to the same thing I would have told her, that it's his first and, things are stressful right now and, everything's changing. She came to all of those same conclusions on her own. But first, she got to unload a little bit just about like all of the stressors that are going on, dealing with the older two kids and her mom and her aunt visiting and just all of this other stuff that I wouldn't have gotten, I don't think, otherwise, if I hadn't taken my assumptions out of there and just asked her, how she was feeling about that. And there were a few other questions that I actually had to stop and say, okay, how do I word this so that I make sure I'm not leading her to something? And it was kind of difficult. I'm not going to lie. Like it took a moment to analyze what I was going to ask, but I do think it was a more beneficial conversation.
wow, that's powerful. Like way to take the book and use it to like fundamentally change how you're communicating with somebody. Wow, that's super cool. Has anybody else done like a test run on anything?
I haven't said I would do a test run, but just sort of reminding that it is an extraordinarily uncomfortable situation to tell someone the truth about something, but to do it in a way that shows that you care about them. And the level of what I've seen of like feedback and gratitude. So actually I had something similar where someone kind of called something out to me. I made a TikTok video. If you don't know my TikTok videos, they're one of three tones. One is joking, one is educational, one is tearing something down. And the tearing something down is done completely because people are lying to job seekers saying, hey, here's this one hidden secret trick that will get you all the money and get you all the jobs. And when I see that, I get angry because then job seekers do that and then they don't get jobs. So there's this one person who has developed a huge reputation for it. She has like 600,000 followers. She has 2 books, has never worked one day of recruiting or HR experience, and consistently makes content saying, here's the #1 secret question that managers love to answer. So in one of the videos that I made, I showed her LinkedIn and I said, this person has absolutely no recruiting, no HR experience. They have no ability, no credibility or authority to be giving this. If you try to do this, if you try to kind of like win over a hiring manager, it's not going to work. While I love their training content, this is not where their place is. And a good friend wrote to me and said, do you really think you made yourself look good by tearing her down versus like you had good points about the question that she asked, but you attacked her credibility instead. And you attacked her experience and you publicly shamed her on LinkedIn instead of saying, hey, while that may sound good, here's what actually happens when hiring managers get that. And I was so angry for the first 2 days after he said that, like, this is a friend of mine. And like, I was like, you know what? I'm like, I'm just sick and tired of people, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I get why you're angry, but is this really the right way to actually win people over? Do you think people would have seen this video and said, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe let's listen to it. Or did it sound like someone who was ripping apart a younger woman because she had more followers than you do?
Oof.
And so it took like 3 or 4 days. And then I actually wrote him a note and I made a public post on TikTok saying, always, always, always surround yourself with people who are brave enough to give you feedback when you need to hear it.
Oof, that would be hard to hear, I can imagine. And I can imagine that it would also have taken me a couple days to like digest it before I'd be willing to admit to myself that maybe I could have taken a different approach. That's so true. It reminds me of like on LinkedIn, there's a group of people that do email teardowns. And then there's another group of people that do email like rewrites.
Which is
and
so
the
great.
the rewrites are helpful.
Right.
Like, and you still see the bad email. So you're still like, I get that same content. I know that this is crappy, but then I also have 3 ideas if I look at that email and think, shoot, that looks a lot like my emails. Now I have 3 new ideas, not just like this email is crap and like burn in hell, whoever wrote this. Like it is a much different tone. Maren, you dropped something in the chat that I adore. You said the how can I support you, or do you need to rant, or do you need advice question. My husband and I use this. We need, are you telling me so that I can listen? Or are you telling me so I can offer solutions? Gosh, has that helped our marriage? Where did you come up with that on TikTok like I did, or where did you?
I think that came off TikTok too, honestly. It's one of those weird ones where like everyone seemed to adopt it at the same time. And it has just helped drastically in us not talking over each other and not assuming that, you know, if someone's having relationship issues, that everyone's spitting relationship advice at them when really they just needed us to be there.
And how often have we, like, raise your hand if you have just wanted to say something out loud? You just want somebody to be like, yeah, Sharon in finance is a bitch. Like, you don't want them to problem solve. You just want them to be like, I am hearing you. I'm listening, right? We've all been there. We've all been there. I think you're right that it did happen, Maren, like all at the same time, because I brought it up to my therapist and then suddenly she was like, yeah, that's what I was going to recommend to you. And I was like, we're on the same side of TikTok. All right. Okay. That's fine. That's fine with me. Dan, drop your TikTok in the chat so that people can follow you if they want. Hey, no, there's no shame here. We're doing a small group, intimate, couple book clubs ago, like half of us cried. We really get to know each other. So people want to follow you for more wisdom.
I'm going to drop it, but with a caveat. So for those of you who don't know, I spend about 80% of my time doing HR content, debunking myths, but really just describing how corporate America works. I spend about 20% of my time in social justice space. So everything from LGBT, Black history, I partner with Latina, trans rights, and I unfortunately came across one of the nastiest, vicious women I've ever seen who makes it a habit to bully smaller Black creators. So I stitched her video and I said, I have no idea who this is, but this person is very clearly the next level AI robot because her face doesn't move and she's apparently evil. And so then I got brigaded, and brigaded is when someone has a large amount of followings and they send all of your followers to mass report all of your videos and content. So now my account is banned for 3 days for a review because it was brigaded. So hopefully it will win, but if anyone follows me right now, it will say it's banned and all of our followers saying, yeah, we got the guy banned. I'm relatively confident it will be restored. And I do have other content and other social media, but it has been a very unpleasant experience, although I have been grateful for the time. But this is where my usual content is across all different social media.
Straight. Oh, that would. My like blood is boiling on your behalf. That happened to me when I was a really tiny creator. Here I am sharing my relatable story. Like I didn't even have 10,000 followers, and Jordan Belfort, like the Wolf of Wall Street guy, stitched my video and called me stupid.
Oh my God.
Because I said that sell me this pen was a lazy interview question.
Which it is.
Which it is. And I said that we can do better. And we should especially not use it because it is so now closely tied to a movie that's like deeply steeped in like being a con artist, stealing, cheating, like drug abuse, like sexual assault. And he was like, so you don't want to hire a closer? You're stupid. I was like, okay, all right. But he had like 2 million followers at the time, and he sent all of them to my account. And it was like 3 weeks of like rape and death threats.
Yeah, the brigading is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah,
the first time I ever stitched a smaller creator who gave really bad job search advice, I saw what my stitch had done to her account, and I was like, okay, I can never do this again. I will only stitch creators if they're sort of similar in size, and if they're not, I will just say, you know, I'm sure the creator is absolutely lovely. I don't necessarily agree with the advice because like brigading and the nastiness, and you can say, please do not go attack these accounts, but for whatever reason, people love to, and it's horrible.
talk about not listening. They don't want to
Yeah.
listen. They just want to talk
They just
at.
want to
and-
attack.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's switch to something funny then. Funnier at least than death and rape threats, which is not a huge lift. Kate shares a few examples of what can happen when we aren't fully listening and when things get lost in translation. And it immediately, I'd love to hear if anybody else has stories where you just like really missed something. Because it immediately made me think of, I worked at a bank all through college, and it was summer. I was working in the drive-through. Construction was being done on the building. So there was construction noise in the background, and the AC couldn't be on with whatever they were working on. So it's like 90 degrees in the bank. It's loud. This woman comes through the drive-through, and she's trying to cash her husband's Social Security check, but it's not signed. And so I'm explaining to her that like he needs to be here. And she was like, he can't come, he's upstairs. And I was like, can you go get him? He needs to, ma'am, he's upstairs. And I keep being like, well, go get him then. Just like, upstairs where? Like, what building? Can he come? She was telling me that he was dead. But I couldn't, because there was so much else going on. I wasn't getting that she was like, he's upstairs. I was hearing like, he's just upstairs. And so then I accidentally bullied a recently bereaved widow. But I'm
Was she-
wondering.
I find some people are kind of okay with it and they're a little bit humorous about it. Like she didn't like embarrass you, did she?
No, I apologized profusely, but I was also like, then she got angry at me and then I had to tell her to go away. So I was also like, you can't have a Social Security. This isn't for you. Like you can't, like, I'm sorry, I legally cannot cash this check.
Yeah.
Which she was not, that didn't make her happy.
You told her to go away.
And then I was like, Matt, you have to pull out of the drive-through, ma'am. There's people behind you. Pull ahead, ma'am. But I was wondering if anybody else has stories like that, where like you have just so massively misheard or misunderstood something.
So I'll go. So I like to use illustrations that people can relate to and try to even make them be a little bit funny, but they're real. So I've been in tech sales for 28 years, and oftentimes you'll get as an objection, well, we're just going to do this ourselves. Or we're getting free software from somebody. It's like, okay, well, free software is like if anybody's ever given you a free cat or a free hot tub, it's so not free. And as it relates to listening, and this is a true story. My wife, I used to tell people, that, the secret to to a happy relationship is to say yes, dear, a lot. But then I learned that you have to listen as well, because I was doing that one day and then I found myself painting our game room, which painting is not something that I like. I was saying, yes, absolutely. And I wasn't listening to the fact that what she was telling me or asking me was to help her paint the game room before we went on vacation. So yes, it pays to listen, or you find yourself painting a room.
Oh, that is very funny. That is very funny. Okay.
I think you got off cheap, Mike.
You got off easy.
Yeah, she could have been asking for a Mercedes.
She could have. I would have been happy with that. Sure, you want to buy a car? Let's do that. I'll buy 5. I'll do that before I paint a painting. Oh no. Yeah, it's one of my least favorite things to do. And she knew that. She got me at a weak moment and she knew I wasn't paying attention. So.
Oh my God. Did she put on Eye of the Tiger, like in the example that Kate used of using background music and background noise to distract you in high pressure negotiations? She just starts cranking Eye of the Tiger.
Not Tom,
No, I think the conversation went a little bit differently, but there's a power dynamic there, right? And I was reminded of it in that moment, and I painted and didn't complain about it.
Oh my gosh, that is very funny. Okay, so the The Eye of the Tiger thing actually reminded me. So there were a couple points in this book that like I felt really seen, really called out. And another one was the idea that distraction extends to even having background music on, because I am very much somebody that when I'm like reading or journaling or even like doing cold copy for my clients, will put on like a calm ambient music. And per the research, like this was not opinion, like she cited multiple pieces of research that even that is a distraction, even that is dividing our brain. And that's like a pretty hard pill for me to swallow. Anybody else feel that? I don't know, Dan, Amelia, did either of you put on? Marion, yeah.
I'm incredibly ADHD. It helps me an insane amount to have some kind of like white noise or like, you know, non-word music, playing in the background when I'm doing anything that does not involve me listening to a person or speaking.
Yes. Like my back brain is occupied so my front brain can work.
So I don't know if that's true for everyone, but
I don't know for me. I just will forget to even put anything on. So I don't know if that says some like a problem with me that I like don't even think to do anything, but maybe I should. I don't know, but like clearly I shouldn't. So maybe I'm doing something right. I don't know. But it really has never been. I mean, if I'm like jamming, I'm jamming totally, like the house is shaking kind of thing. Like I'm going all in, or I'm like not doing anything, I think. So whatever music that is gonna be, focus music and all. I mean, I might as well crawl in bed and go to sleep sort of thing. Like it will make me feel that way opposed to anything else. So
The
I don't
advice
know.
was written for you.
I feel like I feel okay. Like everything else in this book, I'm like, whoa, wake up call. That I'm like, okay, distraction, like I'm good there. Okay, we're good in that regard because I'm not playing really anything ever. If anything, it's like a podcast or something that where it would be the multitasking that is probably more so of a problem than even the music or the anything because I'm trying to listen to what that person's saying while also working. And there's the issue right there of like two things at once is never going to be done fully, right? Like I'm halfway listening, halfway doing what I'm supposed to be doing or should be doing or want to do or responding the way that I want to respond. And that's never going to get you any, what's going to get you a half-ass response because you half-ass, responded to them in that regard. So whatever it may be. So being present is just so freaking important. It's insane. And being aware of who you're talking to, what they're actually saying, taking a step back, kind of rereading it to say it's a Slack message in some community, and you're like, okay, what are they actually saying? Like, what are they actually really trying to figure out? Like, what's the problem here? Like, what is the solution they're looking for? Or do they want a soundboard? Do they just want somebody to hear them? Because I'm happy to be that, and that's kind of how I found myself in the role that I'm in. Because it was like, okay, I became the soundboard to people too, where they could trust me to just literally not, I mean, yeah, have I caught myself in positions a whole hell of a lot of being like, well, here's what Amelia thinks, yeah. But it's also teaching me, like, be careful with what you're doing because you're going to lose this person's trust and they're not going to want to do business with you if you are not showing up in the right manner from the very get-go. Because if you're going to be the first point of contact, really, to be like, hey, I think that I can help you here. Let's just be like, I'm happy to be a soundboard. Let me just hear what's going on with what you guys are doing currently, so on and so forth. Great. Then I can be that bridge to the solution, but only if there's trust and there's okay, this person understands what I'm saying.
All right. I mean, you did say that you felt like this book was written.
It was
for you. So there might be something there.
Listen, Kate, I don't know about you, Kate Murphy. I love you, but I hate you because you read
There is another piece of like science data that she talked about that I'd never heard before, but as soon as I read it, I was like, this makes sense, was the right ear advantage piece, where if you hear it through your right ear, the language comprehension is better and faster. and left ear is better at understanding the emotional aspects of speech and better at comprehending music. I was just like, what? Like, that
Yeah.
is so cool.
So in depth.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be going like this during calls, being like, or like on Zoom, being like, what did you say again on this side? One more time this side. So I heard it on my more musical side. Can you do this side again? So I can
Okay, but speaking about Zoom, and Liz, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but like in and around those same chapters, Kate was talking about how much is communicated over like, facial expressions, body posture, hand movements versus tone without video. So just the tone in conversations versus written communication. And that we are able to get the most, like read the most in a conversation when we are face-to-face or over Zoom, and then voice and then text. And so it was interesting, Liz, that you kind of brought that up early on in the conversation. It admittedly made me think about like Zoom calls or FaceTime calls a little bit differently. So I'd love to hear if other people felt this way. I'm with Liz that I find FaceTime calls just exhausting. Like, I find them exhausting. I avoid them at all costs. I'm similar to Zoom, although often I'm like being paid to Zoom. So I do show up to those a little bit different, but like if a meeting doesn't have to be a Zoom meeting, I will make it a phone call because I find them exhausting also. But I don't know, there was something compelling about the message that made me want to prioritize maybe different Zooms at different times or for different reasons. Did anybody else feel like kind of a change in prioritization of the channels they wanted to have conversations on as a result of the book?
A big channel for me is like I'm big on like Slack huddles. I'm like, hey, this is super simple for me, opposed to us jumping on a Zoom call or whatever. Let's just chat right here if you're free. Boom, done. And so I find that to be like really hard. Face I'm seeing, I assume that they're a psycho. Well, I've been there, so maybe that's me. I don't know. But probably don't care. I'll do it anyways. No, but it is it is understanding how people are about, they're wired too. You have to read a little bit of how people are most responsive, and if like meeting people where they're at too, like if they're a little bit more like there's a pushback there, like, okay, or they're less engaging, so on and so forth. I'm not going to be like, hey, you want to do a quick Slack huddle? Great. Like, they're gonna be like, what the hell are you talking about? No, absolutely not. Like, that's not what I want to do. We're going to schedule something and it's going to be a Zoom call and we're going to have it this time, boom, boom, boom. So knowing that people are wired in certain ways, you've got to respect that. And that's part of an active listening, but more so it's an act of like, just, I don't know, observation of that person, like observing how they work, how they're best communicated with, and then you can actively pursue that conversation of how you're going to actively listen with to them in the very best way possible, because then they're going to be more open and honest and transparent with you because you're meeting them where they best communicate.
That's good. That's really, really good, Amelia, because I am that person. If somebody's like, can we just hop on a call quick? I'm like, here's my booking link and we can hop on a call when it says I'm available. Cheers.
Yeah, you'll do it. You'll straight decline calls.
But,
yeah, you're like, just call me.
I actively decline calls. I keep 2 different phones, and very few people have my personal number, so that I can like keep my work phone away from me. So it's that like I really feel like you hit on something there, that there is a bit of a communication preference, and some of that is probably related to my diagnosed ADHD, and some of it's probably related to my anxiety disorder, that I like to keep things in my bucket. I like to know when things, and part of it is that I know that it is harder maybe for me than other people to keep my energy reserves full. So when I'm going into weeks like this, where I'm doing a bunch of networking and I have a day full of Zoom calls, I prepare for those days much differently.
You're not like, time is different.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I was gonna ask Pam a question, but I'm just realizing that she said they do active listening workshops once a quarter, which I thought was interesting. Rand, what did you say? I had a manager who made us do personal handbooks and answer a bunch of questions. Oh, that's brilliant.
It's something that I like had never seen before and shocked me. And he very much respected it, in that, like, if someone texts me, if I don't answer that text right then, it never gets answered. But if someone sends me a Slack message and it's after hours, I'll see it first thing in the morning when I log back on, and we'll get back around to it. And I can mark it on red.
Dan, is this your next TikTok when you get unbanned?
God willing, right? No, I'm in the middle of writing a book about compensation and how it all works. So I'm trying to focus all my energy on that because like there's no information on this. But the idea of talking about how to better build communication, about how to better understand people is, I mean, I really, really love this. And I think there's so many people that can benefit from this.
Yeah. Can you put a part in your book about comp for advisory roles? Like
do you
board
mean?
roles? Like
Great.
board roles? Because it's a question I get a lot from people and I'm like, fuck if I know, like I'm the, what?
That's a really good point. If there's no equity, don't do it. That's all I gotta say.
You mean like
Yeah.
board of director type of roles?
Mhm.
Oh, no, the problem is that there's no compensation for it. Like there's no science to it. And this is where so many people get so confused about compensation. They're just like, oh, why isn't the company paying me? Or why is it? And like there's science to it and there's modeling to it. But for board roles, like I consider that in startups to be like chaos models. Like there's no rhyme or reason for it.
I'm with you. It is the wild, wild west. This was incredible. I know we are right at, well, it's 5 p.m. my time. I think 11 noon for many of you. I loved this book. Kate dedicates the book to anyone who has misunderstood or felt misunderstood. And I think that this past hour has validated that everybody on this call falls into both of those categories at different times. So I really, if you haven't already, I really encourage you to take a second after we hang up this Zoom to pick one thing that you learned that you want to work on, or a skill you want to build, or something you want to test. Really encourage you to have a firm takeaway from this book that you bring into your life. One last reminder for the LinkedIn Live book club in 2 weeks. That is for everybody. Attend, invite your friends. Dan, Amelia, my friends, thank you so much for coming. Thank you all for joining.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. And next time my TikTok will be back and active. But thank you so much again. This was absolutely wonderful.
It was amazing.
you.
Great to meet you guys.
Thank you so
Great to
much.
meet everybody. Safe travels, Leslie.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Can't wait to see your outfit too. Bye.